Legacy Reanimator is a fun, fast combo deck in Legacy. It aims to put game-winning bombs in the graveyard and then return them to the battlefield. It is primarily blue and black with the green splash for the sideboard. To protect its combo, it runs free counter spells and hand disruption. And it also runs cantrips to let you dig through your deck to find the combo pieces that you need. So let's get started with this deck tech video by talking about the different creatures that Legacy Reanimator plays in its main board. Legacy Reanimator will usually run a very diversified creature base to answer a wide variety of threats. Firstly, the deck runs 3 to 4 copies of Griselbrand. Now, Griselbrand is a very iconic creature in Magic the Gathering. He is a 7/7 lifelink flyer that for 7 life can draw you 7 cards at instant speed. Now he is normally considered Reanimator's best creature, and with the help of Lotus Petal, sometimes after you reanimate him, you can even combo off a second time that turn. Next it runs 1 copy of Tidesproud Tyrant. Tidesproud Tyrant is a big flying beater, plus he lets you deal with problematic permanents on the board, including lands. And as a bonus, he can be pitched to Force of Will. Next it runs 1 copy of Elesh Norn Grand Cenobite. This is your sweeper and it is fantastic against tribal decks. The deck also runs 1 copy of Iona Shield of Emeria. Now against monocolored decks like Elves or Omnital, this is usually a game-ending card. However, there are several decks in Legacy that run more than 1 color as a primary color. So against those decks, if you play Iona, you won't necessarily end the game. So she isn't always the best choice. And those there are the creatures that make up the core Reanimator creature base. Now, sometimes decks will devote 1 to 2 slots for more creatures for further utility. Here are some of the creatures that often see play in those spots. Inkwell Leviathan often sees play in the spot as an answer to spot removal. Inkwell Leviathan has Shroud, plus it is a huge evasive beater, and as it is blue, it can be pitched to Force of Will. Ashen Rider often sees play in the spot because it is an amazing answer to show and tell decks. When they show and tell, you can put Ashen Rider into play and exile whatever they put in. And plus, if Ashen Rider leaves the battlefield, you get to exile another permanent, and he is a huge evasive beater. Those are the creatures that often see play in the main board. Let's move on to the instants and sorceries. It runs 4 copies of Entomb. This lets you tutor for whatever creature card you want to put it in your graveyard to then reanimate. Now, this is a very important card because it lets you select the right creature against the matchup that you're facing. For example, if you're playing against mono blue Omnital, you might choose to tutor for Iona instead of the standard Griselbrand because you know that if you play Iona, you can pick blue and stop Omnital from playing any of their spells. Plus it runs 4 copies of Careful Study. This lets you discard your bomb while drawing extra cards. And of course the deck runs 4 Reanimate. For just 1 black, you can return any creature card in your graveyard to the battlefield for the small cost of paying the life of the casting cost of the card. Now, normally paying this life isn't a big concern. Sometimes though, it will be relevant if you reanimate, say, a Griselbrand. You may not have enough life that turn to be able to draw 7 cards. And of course, it runs 4 Exhume. For just 2 mana, you can return any creature card from the graveyard to the battlefield, and you don't even need to pay any life to do so. Next, we move on to cards that are disruption for your opponents. Thoughtseize is usually played as 2 to 3 copies in the main. Now, Thoughtseize is a pretty nifty card because it can double up. Firstly, you can use it to disrupt your opponent's hand, like say take a counterspell from it, or you can use it to target yourself so that you can discard your bomb creature card to the graveyard. And of course, the deck runs 4 Force of Will. Force of Will protects your combo and it is a hard counter. Yes, you have card disadvantage because you have to pitch another blue card to cast it, but it's well worth it. Decks also normally run between 2 to 4 copies of Daze. Yes, Daze is a free counter which makes it amazing, but it is a soft counter and a pretty small soft counter at that. So normally Daze becomes irrelevant after the first couple of turns in Legacy. Luckily though, as a Reanimator deck, you normally expect to combo off by turn 2. And for card selection, it runs the best cantrip in Legacy, which is Brainstorm. You can shuffle away the cards that you don't want using your fetch lands. It also runs 3 to 4 copies of Ponder. Now, Ponder may not be quite as good as Brainstorm, but unlike Brainstorm, you can see up to 4 cards with Ponder, whereas with Brainstorm, you can only see a maximum of 3. Those there are the instants and sorceries in the main board. Let's move on to the artifacts and enchantments. Reanimator will normally run 3 copies of Lotus Petal. Now, this serves multiple purposes in the deck. Firstly, it gives you extra mana, so it lets you be able to go off on turn 1. On turn 1, you can play a land and a Lotus Petal. And in theory, you could play Entomb and Reanimate in the same turn to be able to combo off on turn 1. Secondly, it also lets you potentially combo off the turn that you bring Griselbrand back to the graveyard, because you can use your life to draw extra cards, and if you draw into extra Lotus Petals, you can play them to then cast more cards to get more bombs into your graveyard to then bring it back in the same turn. And thirdly, it lets you overcome your opponent's soft counters like Daze. In addition, some decks choose to run Animate Dead. This is an enchantment that costs 2. What it does is it lets you bring back a creature card from the graveyard to the battlefield with Animate Dead attached to it. The only downside is it will give the creature -1, -0, which, as I'm sure you can see, is not that bad of a downside. And here's something to keep in mind. Having another Reanimate effect in the deck is actually very relevant, because Reanimator has more cards that let you get your bombs into the graveyard than it has Reanimate effects by default. Normally, Reanimator will run 10 to 11 cards that help it get its bombs into the graveyard. Plus, it always has the option, if it's on the draw, to keep its 7-card hand, draw a card, and then not play anything, and then use your discard step to discard your bomb to the graveyard. But it only runs 8 Reanimate effects by default in the deck unless you're playing Animate Dead, and then you have 9. For this reason, a lot of smart opponents will hold back their counter magic to instead choose to target your animate effects, so having an extra reanimate effect in the deck helps against this. And those there are the main board cards that are non-lands in the deck. Let's move on to the lands. Reanimator is primarily a blue and black deck, plus it splashes green for the sideboard. Normally Reanimator runs just 15 to 16 lands because it gets extra mana from its Lotus Petals. Now the lands you see in a lot of Reanimator decks vary greatly depending upon how many jewels a person owns and whether or not they are splashing green. If you have less access to blue jewels than you would like, you should be replacing these with blue fetch lands. Of course, the deck runs 4 Polluted Delta. This is in your primary colours. It will let you search for an underground sea, a tropical island, a basic island, or a basic swamp. Next, the deck normally runs 3 Verdant Catacombs. This will let you search for an underground sea, a bayou, a tropical island, or a basic swamp, whatever you need. Next, it runs 4 Underground Sea, as of course your base colours are blue and black. It runs a single copy of Tropical Island, giving you access to blue and green in a single land. And it runs a single copy of Bayou, giving you access to black and green in a single land. It then runs either 1 to 2 copies of Basic Island, and it runs 1 to 2 copies of a Basic Swamp. So those there are the cards that commonly see play in the main board. Let's move on to the cards that commonly see play in the sideboard. Lists will normally run 2 to 4 copies of Abrupt Decay. Now, this is normally the main reason that you're splashing for green, so that you can have uncounterable removal against a ton of problematic permanents for you as a Reanimator player. These include Deathrite Shaman, Rest in Peace, Grafdigger's Cage, Ensnaring Bridge, and Counterbalance. Engineered Explosives is often played as an alternative to Abrupt Decay because it can hit almost any problematic permanent. Now, another benefit to Engineered Explosives is it can also hit tokens from, say, Empty the Warrens. Show and Tell is sometimes played as an alternate answer against decks that are hating on the graveyard, since it gives you an alternate answer for being able to cheat your big fatties into play. Extra Thoughtseizes are also often played to act as hand disruption and to also act as another discard outlet. Duress is often played to act as another form of hand disruption that is painless. Pithing Needle is another casual card that can deal with several problematic permanents like Deathrite Shaman, Tormod's Crypt, Karakas, or problematic planeswalkers like Liliana the Veil, who can make you sack your big bomb on the field, or Jace the Mind Sculptor, who can return it to your hand. Massacre is an amazing card to play against Death and Taxes hate bears, and it will completely wipe their board for free. Echoing Truth is another flexible answer to problematic permanents on the board. And of course, Reanimator sometimes plays bombs in the sideboard that it would consider situational and not good enough to be in the main board, such as Ashen Rider. Try a different combination of cards and see what you like best. And if you liked this video, I'd really appreciate it if you gave it a thumbs up. And be sure to subscribe to my channel for more videos like this. Have fun reanimating your way to victory.